Now, wait a minute. What the hell is this? I feel like I'm in a time machine. I feel like I'm in 2024 again.
It's a reunion, Tom. That's what it is.
In more ways than one, I'd say. Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 312 of Empty the Bench. I mean, this is a weird reunion show in a couple of ways. First of all, I'm back on ETV Sports for the first time since 2024. Secondly, I'm alongside this guy right here to my right for the first time on this network by ourselves since 2024. So I feel like I'm in an absolute whirl. I feel like I went into a time machine and then two universes kind of mixed together, and now I'm in like one big mixed past.
No, that's exactly what happened. You certainly went into a time machine, and I came out on the other side of it. So there could be a whole lot worse things that could be taking place this week. But it's good to be back with you for the first time in a while. I don't know when the next time will be necessarily, but it's good to see that you've decided to fill in for Nick while he's away on vacation, and we'll do our best to try to make this the best show we can. We're live this week. This is the first live
That's
episode
difference, yeah,
that I've ever done. So shout out to the 43 people that are already in here. We're on a bunch of different platforms this afternoon. It's Wednesday, April 9th, 2026. Or excuse me, Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. Wherever you may be in the world, it is the afternoon where I am in Chicago, as is where Tom is as well. So thank you guys for coming in. We'll do our best not to bore you, and hopefully it's an entertaining episode. So
absolutely. So yeah, I'm filling in for Nick Morgasen this week. Obviously, a lot of shakeups going on at the network this week. We're live this week. All the shows are live this week. You actually won't see Nick Morgasen also tonight on Press Row. That's another difference. Usually this is Press Row slot. No, today it's ETV slot. You'll see Press Row and ETV's normal slot later tonight with Callum McClurg and Nick DiMartino filling in for Nick Morgasen. So that's a lot of good stuff. I was just on with Nick DiMartino last night on MTGP. Let's see if I remember how to do this. Before we get into anything, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Make sure to ring that bell so that way you get everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. You turn on that bell, hit that bell to turn on all the notifications. Again, that's youtube.com/ETV Network. If you are watching us on any of the X streams that are going on right now, or Twitter, hit that retweet button, give the post a like, quote tweet it, put it on out there, and spread the word about us this week. And of course, make sure to listen to us on Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts, except for this week because we're live this week.
Yeah, and speaking of being live this week, for those who care about my exclusive shows, you will see me in my regular premiere time slot this Friday, 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. It will be a live show on regular premiere time, which is something I've never done before. So that'll be really interesting as well. Usually I'm used to promoting the release on Friday, but this week you'll get a live episode of Bando's Breakdowns, episode 85. So as he just alluded to, we are live this entire week, and we'll see how the numbers do on these shows, but we may make this a regular occurrence depending on how we do on these. But it's certainly an interesting adjustment, but one I think that we're slowly but surely getting used to, at least for this week.
Yeah. Make sure to follow Nick at N Morgasen Radio, follow Zain at Zandano99, and follow me at Thomas J. Albano. All right, let's get right into it. The plan was, it's funny, I'm sitting here back on ETV Sports, and it feels like every time I hosted a podcast back in the day with Nick here on ETV Sports, or with you with MA Outsiders, we always let our recording off with, the plan was, because
it was either, Tom, that's a good memory, because it was either the plan was, or it was an impromptu emergency live stream.
Yeah, well, the plan was to lead off with the Final Four, and we will talk more about the Final Four because, Zan, you were there in Indianapolis, and obviously the big talk around the sports world is the college basketball championship that Michigan ended up winning, but obviously there's more to that. You have the rumor of March Madness expanding. You have the president getting involved in NCAA matters. Then we're going to talk about the bowls because there's a lot of drama going on around the bowls, and unfortunately, as far as you
Yes.
know.
Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you view the previous front office regime, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah, the now previous front office regime, which we'll talk about. We'll hit on a little bit of NFL on the field matters, the Raiders signing Kirk Cousins. There's no Nick Morgasen here, so I'll take the place of him of being the Rager, I guess, when we talk about the Jets. And then since Zain and I are the ones who are hosting this show, we got to end with a little UFC 327 preview, which
Yeah,
Zain
because
and Jack
the card is still mostly decent. We did lose the co-main event, but I'm excited to preview the card with you because it's been a really long time since we has previewed a card. So it'll be nice to do something that we used to do religiously every single week. So
Yeah, and you and Jack will do more of that tomorrow on the MMA Outsiders, which, by the way, little breaking news, MMA Outsiders special time tomorrow of 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, if I'm not mistaken.
that's correct. Yep, that's exactly right.
All
Episode
right.
163. Yeah.
But as I said, those were all the planned topics, but we have to lead off with a little bit of developing drama off the field NFL matter and off the field sports media matter. So, Patriots head coach Mike, if you have not been on Twitter the last, I don't know, 12 to 15 hours or so, you've probably missed everything somehow. You've been under a rock. But
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel, the Patriots head coach, and Diana Rossini, formerly of ESPN, now an insider for the NFL for The Athletic. Photographs have been released of them together at a luxury hotel in Arizona, and the photo evidence, if context is to be believed, what it is to be believed. Again, we don't know the full context to this to these photographs, but just on eye appearance alone, it looks pretty damning. The two were photographed together holding hands. They seem to be at a pool in the Arizona luxury hotel. You have the two of them in bathing suits sitting side by side in the pool together, pretty close up together. And there's a lot of fire that's being thrown around Twitter for the look of this.
So I'm genuinely confused. So in the statement, hi Christy, hope you're doing well. In the statement that was provided, the joint statement, they talked about how it was something they had to do where they were supposed to be part of a reality show. I didn't quite understand where like the whole thing basically started. I don't know where that context fell in. I don't know if I read it incorrectly, but it seemed very confusing at first.
Yeah, it is kind of confusing. And actually, I'm going to pull up the statement. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they released a statement together, and each of them released a statement separately.
Right. So it was very confusing. So it was three separate statements.
Okay.
If you count the joint one.
All right. So Vrabel's lone statement. He told the Post, quote, "These photos show a completely innocent interaction. Any suggestion otherwise is laughable. This doesn't deserve a further response." Rossini then also issues a statement to the Post, quote, "The photos don't represent the group of 6 people who were hanging out during the day. Like most journalists in the NFL, reporters interact with sources away from stadiums and other venues." Steven Ginsberg, the executive editor of The Athletic, actually also has released a statement. Quote, "These photos are misleading and lack essential context. These were public interactions in front of many people. Diana is a premier journalist covering the NFL, and we're proud to have her at The Athletic." As far as...
Well, something doesn't add up because what else is he going to say? You know what I mean? Of course he's going to say something to that effect because he's not going to throw he's not going to throw her under the bus in a public forum like that. At least I wouldn't think so. But
I'm trying to have a look. Okay, people.com has the joint statement.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I don't know if there is a joint statement.
Oh, I could have sworn
Did that get debunked? No, did that get fake news?
I don't know.
All right. Either way, I mean, I don't know. Look, I've been one where you see Christie's chiming in. Reality show, I don't buy it. Yeah, I don't see anything about a potential reality show, and it is a very weird circumstance that we're seeing here. Yeah, I don't see any sort of joint statement. So unless it got debunked,
It could have.
but neither here nor there. They're basically insisting that they're friends, and basically there's a very big lack of context to the photos. And look, I always say the context is everything, but I think the other thing is when you consider the nature of where they are and what it appears that they're doing. Because I don't know, Zan, to me, who was trained in the old school ways of journalism, or the old school ways mixed in with some of the new school, this looks very off.
Yeah, and just I don't know, like there's something about getting too close to sources, and like it would be one thing like if she didn't cover him, but she covers him. So I
Right.
don't know. I just I
And
don't
the
know.
other thing is, and the
And
other
like
thing,
I think it's sort of, and this is no disrespect, but I think it's sort of a bad look for the women in sports crowd that claim to try to be taken more seriously, and now they feel like they have to defend themselves, which they should. But at the same time, it's like, if a female reporter does that, it reflects poorly on everyone.
but the sad part to that, Zen, is if you look at the other women in media, they're not involved in this situation. The one who's involved and is at the spotlight right now and is responsible for her own actions and statements is Diana Rossini. And then, of course, on the whole picture front, Mike Vrabel as well. But obviously, when we're talking about the context of women in sports, it's Diana.
Right.
And unfortunately, this is not, as Twitter loves to bring up, this is not the first time that Diana Rossini has been involved and accused of
No, it's not.
incidents like this.
No, it's not.
And a lot of people are saying that, that a lot of people are teasing, oh, this is why Rossini got a lot of inside info when Vrabel was with the Titans, when she was with ESPN back in the 2010s. And there is an accusation, I believe, going around. I don't know if this is true or not. That apparently another person from, I think it's Washington, had an was accusing Diana Rossini of hooking up with their spouse. I'm trying to get the source on that.
It was a false accusation.
It was a false. Okay, yeah, 2015 Washington GM Scott McLaughlin's wife accused Diana Rossini essentially of trading sexual favors for scoops. And there is another thing. Hold on, who is this? There's a sleeper affiliate who is claiming that Britt McHenry and Diana Rossini got into a fistfight 10 years ago over being involved with Sean McVay. I really... what's this? Oh, it's Nick. Journalists and media should be ashamed for going for clicks and views. Christie's actually pointing out the other big concern to this is that these two are married.
Yeah.
These
Yeah,
two
that
are-
makes it even worse.
That makes it even worse that these two are married. It actually feels like the Coldplay situation all over again. It looks like the Coldplay situation all over again, where you've got these two married, very important people who are now sitting side by side doing something that, if they're friends, yeah, but there's ethics. There are ethics for journalists that you have to follow. You talk about Zam being too close to a source. Kind of looks like they're being a little a little close there, a little too close.
I think so too. And technically, if they're too close, then technically they shouldn't have a source relationship anymore, is how I see it.
Right. And the other thing that pisses me off, about all of this is, even though all of that stuff against Rossini may not be true or is unverified, let's say, Liam Cohen, the reporter who covered Liam Cohen back in the day, I said a few months ago, ate a lot of crap when she gave that little, I guess, motivational talk, if you will, to Liam Cohen and praising him for the job that he did. Now, is that something you should say in a press conference context? Probably not. But it was a very minor thing, and people blew up about it. But meanwhile, here, Diana Rossini is in this major spotlight and a major seeming controversy as of late. And yeah, you can talk about, I was thinking mentioned here, the clicks and views, but it's been silence from the major media sources.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's a few reasons for this. Number one, I don't think they want to say anything that would be perceived as wrong, meaning like it comes out later that it's wrong, so they don't want to have their name attached to it.
That's fair.
That's number one. And number two, I think the silence is because I don't think anybody really knows the full story as to what's going on. Like, as I've been reading about this, there doesn't seem to be one concrete report that I've at least read that explains explicitly what happened. And you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like we only have so many puzzle pieces here, and we don't have the main piece of it to connect everything together.
And I say fair to that, but scrutiny is the key word, in my opinion. The reporter who gave that comment to Liam Cohen was criticized up the wazoo. There doesn't seem to be a lot of criticism and a lot of debate about the situation here when, like I said, maybe we don't have the full context, but at the same time, the way that you have the look there, there is a debate to be had about journalistic ethics and journalistic integrity.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that.
And I feel like that's not being brought up. Not a lot of talk about the integrity and the ethics of Diana Rossini and The Athletic.
I don't think so either.
Which is pretty damning. But I guess it goes to show, the exclusivity nature of the NFL and the people around them.
Yeah, and as someone who's really an NFL outsider, to be honest, I more so cover the college scope of things. It seems way more exclusive than what the college beats are. To where I feel like in the college beat, at least from my experience, and I don't have remotely as much experience as some of these other well-established reporters, but it seems to me like access on the college front is a little bit easier than access on the NFL front. Mm-hmm. Well, if you get to this level where you're like intimate with a source, I don't know. I just think overall it's a bad look all around, especially given that he's the head coach of a major NFL franchise and brand, a team that just went to the Super Bowl, for crying out loud. I mean, I know people say the focus should be on ball, but he's essentially removed himself from the entire situation to where the focus can't be on football right now. And the only person that can really be blamed, to me, besides the Rossini piece, is how involved Rabel has been with this whole thing. Because he could have easily said, hey, I don't want anything to do with this. I have my team to worry about. You can go and take care of your own business. But instead, I don't know if I'm saying this properly, but it seems to me like with this report, it's almost like Rabel was like, oh, cool.
He was dismissive.
Yeah.
Very, very dismissive.
Exactly.
Which sometimes raises more eyebrows than not.
Right.
By the way, you used the term intimate. Yeah, I don't know if that's the right word because these two, by the photo of it, seem to be pretty damn intimate.
Well, then you would say intimate is the right word, right?
Okay, fair. But to Christie's point, if it ends up becoming true that there is some sort of a fair accusation, then the black eye goes from being a little blip, like an MMA fighter gets in their fight, to being a big welt.
Oh, 1000%. It would be one of the biggest stories in sports, if not the biggest sports story of the year, in my opinion.
It would be all over the New York Post at that point.
Right.
More so than it already is with Page 6. By the way, you're a football outsider and an MMA outsider.
You are, well, I guess I've more become an MMA insider these days, but outsider, yeah, for the most part, I still am. Yeah.
I had to play on words since you brought it up.
No, I know.
Yeah, I think it's the journalistic ethics and integrity that needs to come into question, because as you said, if these two are as closely together as they can be, then it shouldn't be their relationship should not be a thing in terms of their work relationship.
Right.
But it also, like, we talk about exclusivity, and I mean, you can relate to this on the MMA front with the UFC. It feels like these big organizations, sports organizations like a UFC, an NFL, any of these big, sports leagues, it feels like to get media access, you have to play ball.
Well, that's number one, but number two, you also have to be with an outlet that is already credentialed or has taken.
Yes, but it seems like, like I don't think Rossini's going to get any sort of punishment for this, and I don't think Vrabel's going to get any punishment for this. I mean, do you feel like Roger Goodell is going to look at this and say this is a concern for the Shield?
He should, but I feel like money trumps everything, and he probably won't, because he knows that this is a big brand, and he knows that if Mike Vrabel isn't the head coach in September, they know that it's going to hurt the bottom line. That's
why I said I'm concerned that nothing's going to happen.
And it's horrible to say that, but if past history tells us anything, that's probably the route they're going to go.
Chris said, if you're talking about a pretty big scandal, yeah, that should be a little concerning. That should be, hey, I got to invoke the integrity of the Shield here and suspend Vrabel for a certain amount of games for this.
Yeah, I think 4 to 6 would make sense.
If he given the NFL standard, probably. Mm-hmm. Although we say that means he's going to get a 2-game suspension.
Or who knows? Maybe he gets suspended for like 1 half.
What is this, college ball?
Well, that would be such a college football thing for him to only get suspended for 1 half.
All right. Well, speaking of college, let's get into the fun stuff.
Okay.
So, Zain, you were in Indianapolis for the Final Four, where it was Illinois, it was UConn, it was Arizona, and it was Michigan, who ended up winning the whole thing, defeating UConn in the national championship game on Monday night. Michigan ended up blowing out Arizona on Saturday night, and then UConn beat Illinois in a very competitive matchup. First of all, Zain, what was your experience like being at the Final Four?
Sure. So I was only there for 24 hours because Illinois got beat, but I'm just going to say, number one, extremely grateful to be able to say that I've covered a Final Four, even if it was only for 2 games. It was a really cool experience, really well organized by the NCAA, and I genuinely mean that. It was extremely streamlined, and my seats were fantastic, and the way they moderated the whole thing for the press conferences was really well done. But yeah, I mean, Illinois losing to UConn, obviously devastating on my end, but simply put, just to start there, Dan Hurley outcoached Brad Underwood. There isn't much more you can really say other than that. Illinois had tons of chances, tons of nice looks, but when you shoot 19 of 56 from the field, and when you can't trim the lead to fewer than 4 points, it's going to be a big problem. And UConn's size and just overall their athleticism and their speed was too much for an Illinois team that really does rely on perimeter shooting. Keaton Walker had a quiet 20-point outing, but it wasn't enough for Illinois to get over the hump. And then defensively, Illinois just could not make stops when it needed to. And That's why UConn was able to win. Looking over on the Michigan side of things, this was just an overwhelming display of essentially an NBA team in college dominating a team that is relying way too heavily on freshmen and sophomores. It's as simple as that. When you get down extremely far to a team that is Morez Johnson Jr. and Yaxo Landenberg and Adai Mara, and you let those guys get going early, they were a wagon that was not willing to be stopped, and they weren't stopped. And when you look at the national championship game, Michigan played a pretty clean game, but wasn't shooting the ball very well. I think for UConn, they just weren't getting the right looks in the national championship, and that's why UConn faltered. I thought UConn would lose by more. But yeah, overall, though, I had a really good time. Obviously, for those of you who haven't seen it, me letting Brad Underwood kind of let it out and get emotional has gotten some attention. So I was glad to give you guys a raw inside perspective on that as I was staring right at him as he was telling me how he was feeling following the loss, as it was his first Final Four. And yeah, overall, Indianapolis, great host. Looking forward to Detroit next year. And if there's any sporting event that people should be adding to their bucket list any year, it's the Final Four. And in fact, based on who's in it every year, there's a good chance the national championship tickets will dwindle. I know some people who were able to get into that national championship, which I was physically not at. I decided to come home a little early, as I said. You could have gotten into that national championship, physically gotten in for $50. And I think for the bargain that you got in Indy with a bunch of different games, NIT championship, Final Four, and then, of course, the D2 and D3 championship, you couldn't have asked for a better weekend. And I thought it was a very interesting cap end to a very exciting college basketball season, the Big Ten winning their first title in 26 years. What did you think?
I thought it was a pretty dominating. If you want my tournament thoughts as a whole, first of all, I've kind of branches off to stuff I've talked about on very recent editions of the ETB Lounge. I know Florida ended up losing to Iowa, basically the Cinderella of this tournament.
Oh, 100%. I mean, a 9 seed going to the Elite Eight, and you're excuse me, a 9 seed going to the Elite Eight and having Illinois on the ropes at halftime and nearly advancing to the Final Four. You couldn't ask for a better story than that.
No. But people have pointed out to say, oh, Florida was the weakest one. I disagree. I think Duke was the weakest of the 1 seed. First of all, they were dealing with injuries to their starting lineup. Second of all, they were this close from losing to a Siena squad who, up until the closing seconds of the game, played the same 5 kids the entire time.
Yeah.
That's not...
And had a double-digit lead at one point.
Right. That's not strength to me. And then they go on to... What happened?
No, it's not. You're exactly right.
Like, the one good win that Duke had in the entire tournament was the blowout win over TCU in the round of 32. The Sweet 16, they should have lost to St. John's, honestly, if it wasn't for St. John's and them exchanging fouls, and then the kid towards the end of the St. John's game just getting a really horrible look. But then they really make history in a bad way. They play UConn in the Elite Eight. They're up by 15 plus. I think it was more towards 19. And they blow that lead.
Yeah. Thanks to Braylon Mullins.
Braden Mullins, unbelievable. But the first time, there was a stat that Ben had mentioned that number 1 seeds who were up by like 19 or something or 15 or something like that were 170 something and 0. And then the UConn beat Duke.
I think it was 179 and 0 or something.
Yep. When you make history like that after shoddy performances against St. John's and Duke, St. John's and Siena, I question your number 1 seeding.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think Duke was the worst number 1. The second worst number 1 was Florida.
And then obviously it's obvious and easy to say Michigan right now, but here's what shocked me. And I'm actually going to take our new ETV colleague Nate Miller's words from a recent lounge. The way the Michigan-Arizona game played out, if it played out in the way that it actually did, and I didn't know the context where one number one seed beat up on the other one early, and then it was competitive the rest of the way, but one team got beat up too early, I would have thought Arizona had done that to Michigan. But no, Michigan was just, and that's the thing, Michigan was just flat out dominant the entire tournament up until the national championship game, where it's a little more sloppy and it was a little more back and forth. But Michigan just flat out beat everybody cleanly. It wasn't even close in most cases until the Natty game.
Correct. So I'm just going to be fully transparent. I went to 7 Michigan games in person this year. It just happened to be the way the cookie crumbled, and 6 of them they won. And I knew that they were national championship good when they hung 30 plus in Chicago at the United Center against Tennessee. I'm like, okay, if this team could do that to Alabama and then Tennessee, this team is extremely difficult to beat. And I just think for a few reasons too. Mm-hmm. Like, I think this goes to show that Dusty May's turnaround of 2 years was unbelievable. This goes to show that even though people criticize the transfer portal, it ended up working out in a lot of ways for Michigan in the end. I mean, I don't think anybody expected Elliot Cadeau to transfer from UNC and have an immediate impact the way he did. And number 3, which I think is the most interesting part about this, they had five transfers on this team, 5 transfers that really didn't know each other before the season started, and they were able to mesh and gel. And now looking back, based on the body of work that they did, they were the best team all year, and I don't think people realized it until way later in the tournament. I certainly didn't realize it until they beat Tennessee to go to the Final Four. I'm like, okay, this team is really, really, really good. I just didn't know how good they actually were. So, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Michigan and all that. And, yeah, I mean, to see 2 Big Ten teams make the Final Four, 9 teams total make the NCAA tournament. Like, you want to talk about already a banner year for the Big Ten football championship, men's basketball championship, and women's. You can't really get much cleaner than that in terms of a conference domination, if you will. You usually don't see that. It's the first time since 2007 that one conference has won all 3 championships. So, I don't know. Who was in your Final Four?
My Final Four, I think I had Houston coming out of the Florida, where your team obviously got that spot. I had Houston.
Yeah, I had Houston too. I thought Houston was going to beat us.
I thought Houston was going to have the fire under them to get back to the national championship. But you know what? Florida, Houston, and Illinois. That's a tough top 3 for a bracket. Now, I know a lot of praise is going to the East bracket and how stacked it was. And I did have Duke going as far as they did. Or, pardon me, into the Final Four. But still, you can't lose in that. I mean, you can't have the low performances in that kind of fashion that you did throughout the tournament.
So I need to know your opinion now that we're talking about Duke.
On the other side, I got right, Michigan, Arizona, but I had Arizona winning.
Okay, gotcha. So speaking of John Shire, I'm curious to your opinion. Do you think he stays at Duke, or do you think he pursues the NBA? What do we think?
I mean,
I don't really think there's much upside of him staying at Duke, to be quite honest with you. I don't know why he'd want to stick around.
But to the other side of that, Dan Hurley, he had an offer that he could go to the NBA, but he chose to stay with UConn. And I honestly think that was the right decision for Dan.
I do too.
So I think it really depends on the situation that opens up. What NBA team is going to offer a job to him, and what kind of work is he going to have to do? Because Duke, as weak as they performed on paper, they have a stellar lineup themselves. Yeah. Duke has a developing, NBA-like team themselves. So If you go from that to a team that's been consistent losers in the NBA, that's a situation where I say I might actually be happier at Duke.
Yeah, but to kind of counter you there, if he does go to the NBA, at least he doesn't have to worry about his roster totally fluctuating year after year after year to where he has to coach an entirely new team almost on a yearly basis.
That's true.
So I don't know if he's feeling that way, but with all these rumors heating up, who knows where he's going? I mean, shoot, we had Michael Malone just get hired by UNC, so you never know.
Yeah, and I mean credit to them. I mean Mike Malone, and I said this last night with Nick D on MTGP. Mike Malone may not have coached college basketball since 2001 when he was with Manhattan, or 2000, and that was when he was an assistant coach. Actually, yeah, it
Right.
was 2001. He's never been a full college head coach. But you know what? He does bring NBA experience for 25 years to those kids. And he does have very recent championship coaching pedigree. So that's going to attract kids. And kids are
Oh,
going to want to listen to a coach like that.
oh, for sure. And then speaking of this mess, I think it's a good transition to talk about this potential expansion here. So the NCAA is thinking about expanding the field from 68 to 76. And if I could get on a soapbox here for just a second,
Well, do you want me to give you context first before you get on the soapbox?
yeah, go
Okay.
for it.
For those who haven't known, so this is not finalized just yet, but they are discussing it, and it could happen as early as next year. What would happen is the first four would essentially become the opening round, and it would become essentially the first 24. So 52 teams would be automatically qualified for the 64 team March Madness. The other 24 teams would all have to essentially play-in games for the final 12 spots.
See, this is where I think it gets too confusing because now you're going to have teams in there that, not to be that guy, but I'm about to be that guy for a second. There's going to be teams in there that don't deserve to be in there. It's simple. It's as simple as that. You're going to get teams that either lose the conference championship or have a subpar 500 record, but somehow get in based on certain metrics. It's not going to make sense. I feel like they're not doing their best job of trimming off the fat should this go through. It's the same argument with the college football playoff. You don't need to go any more, at least in my opinion, increase wise. If you go any more than 16, you're doing it wrong. And I feel like this takes away the beauty of the tournament because the first four, as it stands right now, is legitimately the first four in a sense. 11 plays 11, 16 plays 16, et cetera, et cetera. To me, I feel like you're just throwing in too many games. You're going to have to add 2 extra sites now, 2 extra sites that nobody asked for.
I think some of these, if not all of these first opening round games might be played at home sites.
Well, that's kind of cool because you can never
I
get enough
think
home
that's
games.
not final. That's not final.
No, I know. I'm saying if it were to become that, that is kind of cool because you can never have enough home games.
Right, but I think you were going on the right points there because you said it goes to college, but it's not even just college sports. MLB just a few years ago talking about, and since another CBA is coming up, it's probably going to come up again. The idea of expanding. Over the past decade, 15 years, we've gone from 8 to 10, 10 to 12, and now they're talking about 16 teams for the MLB playoffs, and that would be the same as the NBA and NHL. And the NBA gets a lot of crap that the way that teams play, we had the 8 from each conference. There are teams with losing records or 500 records making the playoffs.
Yeah, but at least the play-in from the NBA's perspective to me kind of makes sense though.
Well, here's where I was going to go to that. Here's the answer to why our arguments about it don't matter.
And TV ratings.
TV ratings. The leagues are good. The league is going to get more money, or the organization is going to get more money. The teams are going to get more money. It's obviously going to be a very big hit, and that's why you have the constant talk of expansions of these different playoffs and all these ideas like play-in tournaments and in-season tournaments. It's
It's
all about
going to help. It's going to help. You know what it will help though? It'll help the smaller schools that don't have the resources like a Michigan State, like an Illinois, to where they can use all that money and put it back into the programs year after
now
year
that
after
is
year.
true. But now let me play devil's advocate. Imagine you are team number 53 on the NCAA's list.
Okay.
Now, instead of getting, for decades, for a couple of decades now, that would automatically get you a spot in March Madness. And now you have to play a first 24 matchup. And let's say you get paired up with, let's say, team number 65 or 69 or 71, and you have a bad game and you lose. It's like, what the hell? It's like,
Yeah.
and I say that because as much as you talk about the beauty of the first four, there are people out there that don't count the first four. They count that first Thursday onwards as the tournament. So now it's like you could be school number 53 and you may not get to the actual March Madness. And to quote Dino Ivey from our network chat, do we really need to see the 76 best team in NCAA playing in March Madness?
We probably don't.
We don't. I'm sorry,
Probably
we don't. It's not going to be stopped because we even talked about it with streaming deals with these sports leagues. It's not going to be stopped because of all the money that goes in and the ratings. At the same time, it is diluting the tournament, and
it's also diluting the conference tournament too because the turnaround time is so small.
Right. But here's the thing, and here's what's weird, and it actually goes to something you said about a team that's 500 or just barely above 500. Who would you rather have for these extra teams?
Okay.
A team, I say a team like, let's say, I'm just going to pull off an example from my head. All right, don't take it. Let's say a team like a Michigan State or an Illinois or a Northwestern who make a conference tournament. They have a strong record. Pardon me. Let's go with Michigan State, power conference, but obviously they play a certain schedule. They struggle. They're sub 500, they're 500 and they lose in the semifinals of their conference tournament. Okay. Or would you rather have, let's say, and I'll use my home school as an example, a Hofstra, who, let's say, has a strong season as a mid-major but loses their conference championship game?
Well, the question that I would have is, what was Michigan State's strength of schedule using this hypothetical? Mm-hmm. What was Michigan State's strength of schedule compared to Hofstra? And that's how I would determine who I would put in.
And I only say that because if they think that this is going to stop all the media and the explosions about last four in, first four out, no, it's not going to. People are still going to talk about it.
It will only intensify it.
Correct.
And to me, I think Miami of Ohio having to play to get in was unbelievably stupid.
And by the way, not only do you dilute the NCAA March Madness tournament, you also dilute the NIT, which is already starting to have issues where a lot of schools are basically pulling the Notre Dame. We lost out on the big tournament. We feel absolutely our morale is crushed. No, thank you.
Well, yeah, and the same goes for the college basketball crown. Even though you get millions of dollars, teams just don't feel like it's worth it. I don't know.
Which is a shame on those players who want to experience postseason basketball.
That's true.
I mean, look at Auburn. Auburn, I think, actually did it the right way. Oh, you don't want to include us in the tournament? Well, screw you. We'll go win the NIT. And guess what? They did.
That's what they did.
Now,
granted, people are going to give them crap and say, "Oh, you guys an easy path." No. I don't want to.
But the fact that they won now sparks the conversation again. The what if they did? What if they got in? Right. Because that shows they were the best of the rest.
Right.
So, yeah, those other tournaments are also going to suffer. Now, we're talking all about all these different benefits and like for the schools and stuff, but all right, it's time to go into politics a little bit, which I know we hate to do with this show, but so President Trump has proposed something called the SCORE Act. And this is actually being championed by several different schools. There's some work on the bipartisan side.
including my own, by the way.
Here's the proposal. This is a bill aimed at creating national rules for college athletics rather than letting things go by state cases. This would create a single federal framework for NIL deals, aiming to ensure fair compensation while limiting abuse or loopholes.
Okay.
Now, I'm trying to do this, I guess, like pro-con style. So obviously that sounds a little pro. Con. College athletes would be fully defined as non-employees, no matter the sport, no matter the school. There would be all these talks about certain schools approving of unions. The unions would be disbanded and disbarred. NCAA would have clear legal power to enforce rules, including transfers, recruiting, and NIL oversight. And they would get the antitrust lawsuit protection that organizations like the MLB gets.
Okay.
Pro, which Nick DiMartino promoted last night on MTGP, would create a federal standard for agents and NIL agreements, basically trying to shield any fake shady agents or fake deals of NIL out.
Right.
Stronger rules on player movement and recruiting. I believe what ends up happening is on their 19th birthday or high school graduation, whichever comes first, they get 5 years. And a player is only eligible once to be able to transfer without having to sit out a season.
As they should be. I think that's more than fair. Because I don't like it when, just my opinion, I think it kills your career when you transfer to more than one school.
Correct. At the same time, basically, this ruling from Trump, if it passes, says no more Stetson Bennett's, no more Trinidad Chamblises. You get 5 years. That's it.
Because 5 years, I think, is more than fair. Because you could either redshirt, or if you get hurt, that's 1 year that you can use as almost a backup year to make up for it. Because technically, a regular college undergrad stint is 4.
Correct. So, limits transfers and eligibility window, cracks down on NIL payments beyond fair market value. There's a thing there that basically protects funding for smaller schools, smaller sports, and women's sports.
Which is good, right?
Yeah, which is really good. So supporters say college sports are out of control financially. The NIL and transfer portal has created chaos. I mean, there's over 1,000 athletes right now in the transfer portal in only a few days. It goes back to what you, Will, and Nick D like to call it, that college sports right now are the wild, wild west.
Right. This would sort of end that part of it.
But critics do say it limits athletes' earning power. It locks players out of employee rights because, again, the argument of athletes being considered employees is shut down with this bill. And it gives too much power back to the NCAA.
Well, I'm one of those people that believes that athletes should be considered employees because they're already making so much money for the school anyway, and now they're able to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness that, to me, they should be treated just as anybody else at the university, regardless of if they play sports or if they don't. And to me, I don't think it's fair to categorize people that do something different than somebody else does when they're just trying to make money for themselves, to better themselves financially before some of them go pro. A lot of them won't go pro, but these experiences do teach them some of the, core principles. And I just think it's unfair to say that what they do, essentially, I don't know if you've done research on this, but based on what some of these schools put these players through, regardless of sport, is very much organized like a full-time job. They have a literal schedule on a daily basis that they have to follow. That's essentially a mandated schedule by their coaches or by whatever program they're
Well, the thing is, it feels like in these days, whether for better or for worse, an athlete actually could benefit more with their NIL deals and make more staying in college than being a rookie in an NFL or an NBA.
That's exactly right. Because now these collectives are willing to pay them whatever they feel they deserve. Because donors are willing to step up and bring in money and all that. That's why they're seeing, guys like John Blackwell, the Wisconsin point guard, is going to enter the NBA draft, but in doing so, he's going to also test the waters in the portal, and he wants $5 million to go to whatever school he wants to go to, whether it's Duke, Alabama, Michigan, or Illinois. So,
Do you
I
think
mean,
do you think the NILs and transfer portal rules are out of control?
I do, and I think it's working for some programs, but it isn't working for others because they've either fallen behind or they don't have the adequate resources to keep up. Because you can see some of these schools are killing it in the portal, Indiana being a prime example. Kurt Cinetti bringing over all of his guys from James Madison. If you look at the landscape 5 years ago, that would have never happened. So I mean, I think some schools know how to use it, and then other schools I think don't know and are being left behind.
Fair.
Some coaches simply just don't believe in it. Dabo Sweeney being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't believe it works. Whereas Dusty May, and I was there when he said it. He's like, I've learned how to use the portal, and actually recruiting has become even easier these days now than it ever was because now we can all look these guys up. We all know what they're doing. We can contact people around them. We basically know everything about them before they even arrive on campus. So some coaches get it, and then other coaches don't. Then if you look at his rival coach, Tom Izzo, he can't stand it. He thinks it's totally ruined the game, and he
Well,
thinks
Tom Izzo's a very old school guy.
no, it's true, but he thinks from a relationship standpoint that it's absolutely killed it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
So,
I think every coach. My general conclusion though is I think every coach has a different perspective.
I think there are people in Congress who are trying to come up with alternatives to the SCORE Act. So there is work being done on college athletics eligibility, NIL, transfer portal, but what actually ends up happening remains to be seen, and we'll have to see what ends up happening. All right, let's get out of college sports for a little bit. Let's go to the pros. And unfortunately, Zan, for you, we got to go to a two-parter for the Chicago Bulls. So first, let's start with this because this is going to lead to this. So let's start with, especially because Jaden Ivey's situation happened after you and Nick had recorded last week's episode.
Correct. I talked about it on my show, and I was very clear on my stance with it. But yeah, it was after we had already recorded.
All right. So Jaden Ivey allegedly made several remarks that were anti-gay, went against certain faiths, I believe Catholicism, and it ended up with Jaden Ivey ended up getting cut. He was not a happy camper as a result of that.
No,
but now in the days since, and we kind of briefly mentioned it on E2E Lounge on I think Sunday because we were just going through and all of a sudden I had come across it on social media. Apparently Jaden Ivey was found in the streets basically trying to be a street preacher.
Yeah, he was trying to be a preacher, and people were live streaming him and on. I can't believe I'm even using this social platform because we don't use it anymore. But people were live streaming him preaching, and the comments were unreal. Like people were like people were watching this thing as if it was the biggest live stream on the planet.
But I mean, it's one thing if you're passing a street preacher and it's just a random, and you're like, yeah, whatever. But then hey, didn't this guy just play the NBA last week?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I was very clear about this last week, and I'm going to be very clear about this again.
Yeah,
he needs to get some help. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, I mean, as I said a week ago, and my stance hasn't changed. I don't know if your stance is different than mine. He was not the long-term answer the Bulls were looking for to even remotely begin with. When he was traded from Detroit, they were just trying to ship him off anywhere they possibly could because I'm sure that he was not a good locker room presence in Detroit, although Jaden Ivey himself completely disagrees and claims that he was a good teammate. Obviously, I don't know him personally, so I can't speak to who he is as a human being. But if the Detroit Pistons cut him and the Bulls also cut him, I think there's a problem more so with him than there is with anybody else, because I don't see, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've not seen a single ex-teammate speak out in support of him during this entire situation. I
haven't seen anybody really giving support. And honestly, look, regardless of what you think, first of all, regardless of what you think of the things that he has said, you know, I always have to say this as somebody who was taught in the old school journalism ways. The First Amendment protects you from government retaliation. But when you work for a private business or a business like the Chicago Bulls or the NBA, you can get consequences. And guess what? He said some pretty offensive things, and the consequence, he was cut. And the consequence is right now it seems like no NBA team wants to touch him with a 39.5-foot pole. Secondly, I get he is a young man, and I get he is somebody who is struggling. First of all, he does need help. Second of all, there are consequences to your actions, and unfortunately, he is learning that. You know, when I've talked about this,
third of all, he's not at Purdue, which at Purdue I'm sure was a little bit more of a safe space. So
yes, but I even talked about this with Dawn and Geno and their whole controversy when it came to Geno. You are a role model. You are a public figure. You are somebody who, for better or worse, we say that kids look up to athletes who are human. You are supposed to be a role model, and you are, like I said, a public figure. So your actions, your words are going to constantly be followed. I get he is still a developing young man at 23 years old, but you have, for better or worse, an image and a reputation, and your image and reputation can be connected to your team, again, for better or for worse, for right or for wrong. So there are going to be consequences, and he's cut. And then to be going out and preaching in the streets right afterward, it feels like he didn't learn from his consequence. And now the young man needs help. He needs guidance.
Yeah, he needs guidance, and it seems like, and this is sad to say, but it seems like he's more concerned about being a social media influencer now than anything else.
Or a preacher.
Right, or a preacher. But I'm saying he's going out and making all of these public videos and all of these public statements almost like he's genuinely enjoying doing it. So I don't know.
Which by the way, brief soapbox thing. The actions that he's going with and the things that he's doing and saying, I'm sorry. That's not what a true religious person should be doing.
No. And you can believe any religion that you want, but anybody who even knows...
But part of religion is being an upstanding human being, and right now he's not acting like that.
No, 100%. I was going to say, you can follow any religion you want, and you can listen to the things he said, and you'd be like, yeah, that's not a rightful insert religion here thing to say.
But apparently, this Jaden Ivey situation was the last straw for Bulls ownership, which leads to this. Executive Vice President Artūras Karnišovas and General Manager Marc Eversley have been dismissed by the organization. Now, ownership reportedly wants to keep Billy Donovan as the head coach of the team.
As I think they should. I mean, he is a proven winner. He's been a proven winner with the Bulls in the past. He was a proven winner in college, obviously in Florida. But I mean, these two guys in the front office they made some dumb decisions. I mean,
you look at the Bulls right now. This is the worst season the Bulls have had in years?
Yeah, they've won one playoff game. They've won one playoff game in over a decade.
That too.
So
it's an absolutely terrible look. It's like just when you think things can't get worse for the Bulls, somehow this season proved otherwise.
Yeah, and luckily, I went to 2 Bulls games this year, and one of them that I went to was when they snapped their 12-game losing streak. When they beat
you're a good luck charm. You need to constantly be at the United Center.
No, I guess I do. But yeah, these two guys needed to get run out of town a long time ago, and these guys were making the decision worse. And you could tell with every press conference that they didn't quite know what they were doing until they finally realized they didn't know what they were doing because they were canned. So I don't know. Hopefully the Bulls can make a decision. I'd like to see them get the Warriors GM if he's available. It seems like that's a big rumor going on right now. Is that they might go after him? But
You mean Dunleavy?
yes.
Mm-hmm. I think that would benefit the Bulls a little bit to help fix the mess that they're in.
Yeah. I started to turn on these guys, Tom, when they traded away Ayo Dosunmu. It made no sense to me at all. I'm like, what are we doing trading the only guy that genuinely cares about staying home where he is? And they got rid of him. And they got rid of the one fan favorite that people would show up constantly to see. And that was the disappointing part. And it's a little bit closer to me because I used to share classes with them, so it kind of hurt me even more. But there are tons of people that associated the Bulls with Ayo Dosunmu, and when he was gone, it felt like they just really didn't have an identity. So,
like they didn't know what they were doing.
No, absolutely not.
All right. Speaking of, do we know what we're doing? Let's go over to the NFL. The Raiders have signed Kirk Cousins. And I'm getting flashbacks. Zain, I've talked about multiple times in the intro of this show, getting flashbacks to 2024. Here's another one. So, remember when it was the two of us, Grant, I think Brody, Dan, Ben, we were all watching the NFL draft together. And the reactions that we had when the Falcons drafted Michael Penix after signing Kirk Cousins to a multi-million-dollar deal.
I remember that. Yep.
I feel the very same way with this. So for you guys, the Raiders are going to get Fernando Mendoza. And we've known this. Not even when they got the number one pick.
We've known this since Fernando Mendoza found Amari Cooper Jr. in the back of the end zone against Penn State.
I was going to say we've known this since he won the Heisman, because around the time of December, the Raiders were number 2 or number 3, but they were of the top at the top 2 or top 3 at that point, the only one who needed a quarterback. So we've known for months that they're going to get Fernando Mendoza. And now they signed Kirk Cousins, $20 million guaranteed. Now I get it.
This feels like a deal. This feels like a deal on the old episode of NFL Top 10, Tom. The old episode of the NFL Top 10 worst free agent signings, when the then Washington football team, I won't say their old name, but when they decided to sign Albert Hainsworth. This is what it feels like.
I get that Fernando Mendoza needs a veteran to learn from, but it's just $20 million in guaranteed money this year. Now, supposedly what happened is he was basically being paid $10 million by the Falcons this year to sit at home. So he needed more incentive to get off the couch and do another NFL season. So what they've done is he's going to get $20 million in guaranteed money this year. The deal also includes a club option for 2 years at $80 million and can be worth up to $172 million over 5 years. Although only the first year, the $20 million in 2026, is guaranteed. So I get that they want a backup option in case things don't work out. I get they want somebody to teach Fernando Mendoza. But now look at the situation that you're in. You're either going to have the number 1 overall pick in 2026 NFL draft sitting on the bench behind Kirk Cousins, or you're going to have a $20 million bench player.
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
It's a recipe for a disaster either way. Because Fernando Mendoza is going to quickly realize this isn't Indiana University.
Make it make sense to me.
Seriously, it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I don't know if the Raiders have a decent enough team around him.
I don't think so.
And now that now sparks the question, because Fernando Mendoza, it's not about Fernando Mendoza not starting. It's when he's going to start.
Right, exactly.
Because he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. That means you're going to start him at some point this year. I'll insert whatever quarterback being drafted in the first round, except for Mahomes, who sat behind Alex Smith for a year. I mean, you can't do that strategy with the number 1 overall pick.
No,
At the
you
same
can't.
time, you just gave Kirk Cousins $20 million guaranteed this year, which also should signal that he's going to get starts during the season.
Right.
So does that mean Kirk Cousins is going to start for Vegas for the year? And after a month or so, when the Raiders are 1-3, 0-4, 1-5, 0-5, then you're going to put Mendoza in?
Seems like it.
I guess that's the strategy that they're going with, which means it's funny that this already signals for me another bad year for the Raiders.
Well, I think it was already looking that way.
It was already looking that way, but that's just when you're general managership and you're a front office and things are looking that way, you try to make signings and stuff that it's not going to be.
I just don't understand from John Spytek's perspective how this even makes sense. I don't understand.
Like I guess they needed the money to ensure that Kirk Cousins would get off the couch. But the thing is, the veteran free agent quarterback class in the 2026 free agency was total shite. It was terrible. So you could have picked any of those, and you didn't have to spend this much money.
Nope. For a guy that's extremely injury prone too, and is not the 2023 version of himself, even remotely a little.
I was going to say very streaky, very up and down.
Yeah, and not 100% healthy either.
No. So. But you know what else doesn't make sense?
What?
This. And I bring this topic up because Nick Morgasen is not here. Otherwise, he'd have a field day with this. That I'm serious. This is what he said. He thinks that Geno Smith is the answer. He thinks that Geno Smith really, really wants this and thinks that – hold on. I'm trying to get the full quote here. He says, I just feel like he's the guy that's going to lead us to the promised land. Listen, I know he had his struggles. I think a lot of quarterbacks, they have their struggles. But I do know this. He understands exactly what happened last year. I don't want to get too far into that because I wasn't there, obviously, with the Raiders. But I do know that, man, there are some things he knows he can correct. He's at fault on some of those. But there are some things that he knows that he's going to get better at. I look forward to him doing that. And he thinks that Geno Smith is going to lead the Jets to the Super Bowl.
Considering that they haven't made the Super Bowl since 1969 or 1968 rather, and they haven't made the AFC Championship since 2010, I don't know what leads me to believe that they can start now. So
I don't think Geno Smith is the answer. I think it's more likely that he gets into another money incident with a teammate and gets punched in the other side of his face than he does getting the Jets to the Super Bowl.
Probably.
I really don't get this, man. How do some of these NFL people have jobs?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them, not me. I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't.
The guy who was just with the Raiders, who was part of the worst team of last season, is now going to be your answer for your team making it to the Super Bowl? No, absolutely not.
No.
All right, let's get into the fun stuff to close today's show out. Let's talk about UFC 327. Now, it just lost the title fight to UFC 328. Now, whether you want to say that's because Van has a minor injury, or you want to believe the conspiracy, I don't have the sound effect on me right now, that they needed a little boost to 328. Either way, there's still some interesting matchups with 327, and we are going to have a new champion at UFC 327.
Yeah, it adds to the really, really strange post-John Jones light heavyweight history. Does it not? It feels like the belt's going back to playing hot potato again like it does every 2 years.
Yeah, completely.
And Yuri has a chance to become a 2-time champion. Can you believe? Can you believe that?
I think he can. I mean, look, Yuri Prohaska has been absolutely dominant in between the UFC and his days before the UFC, particularly with Ryzen. And the only guy who really, really has gotten the better of Yuri in the UFC is Alex Pereira, who's about to move up to heavyweight and potentially become the first UFC athlete ever to win championships in 3 different weight classes. So that's not a penalty on him. Look, Olberg, I like Olberg. I think that Olberg is strong. I mean, he's got the knockout wins over Alonzo Menefield and Dominic Reyes. But when you look at his rise and his history versus what Yuri has done, and Yuri's got the championship background. I mean, Olberg has a win over Jan Blachowicz this past last year in London, pardon me. And he's got the win over Dominic Reyes from September. And I know Reyes has been on a little bit more of a surge, but
yes.
I don't know if that's enough against the former champion like Yuri, who technically never lost his title in the octagon. And like I said, the only guy who's really stopped him is one of the pound-for-pound greats today in Alex Pereira.
Yeah, and again, you could even make the argument further that I don't know if getting a win over Dominic Reyes earns you a title shot, but I guess in the wacky world of
he's technically number 3 in the rankings.
That's a good point. But
yeah, this sounds sad to say, but maybe it's because I like Yuri's attitude and I like his style. I don't think Olberg wins this fight.
I don't think so either.
I don't think he can hold Yuri's power down for 25 minutes.
I don't think so either, and I think the only way he could do it is if he gets Yuri to the ground, which I think is easier said than done.
Right, and if you ask a fan if they want to see a Yuri knockout or an Olberg take the fight to the ground 25-minute decision, they want the Yuri knockout.
No, for sure.
And I think that's what UFC secretly is hoping for too.
And I'm sure they're secretly hoping for Yuri to win so Yuri could fight Magomed, so Magomed could potentially get knocked out again. That's probably what the UFC.
Yeah, do we still think Dana hates Magomed?
I think so. I mean, look, we haven't heard from him in since that Pereira fight.
Yeah,
right?
Since the rematch where he got knocked out.
So I don't know. I think it's really interesting, but as you sort of alluded to, obviously the other title fight fell out, and as you said a minute ago, there were some other fights on the card that are of interest to you. But do you think, before we move to those though, what round do we think Prohaska wins in? Because I think he wins in the second round.
I think second or third round.
Okay. Are we disappointed by this new co-main event, Murzakanov versus Costa? I don't know if Costa deserves it, to be quite honest with you.
Somebody pointed out on Twitter, I think, Costa continues to benefit from co-main events falling out, and he slides right in.
I know.
But he's taken on Azamat Mazakurov, and I know Paulo Costa. I was never the biggest Paulo Costa fan, and then he started to, he started to get back to being the old Paulo Costa, the killer.
Oh,
from
Tom,
the
you mean Murzakanov?
What?
Oh, you mispronounced his name. You meant to say Murzakanov, right?
Murzakanov, yeah, that's what I said. But I'm talking about Costa. For ever since the title fight with Izzy, he just has not looked the same. But that has started to change a little bit. He versus Robert Whittaker was a decent fight. He fought Sean Strickland closely to a split decision. He beat Kapilov, but taking on an undefeated guy who's had finishing power like Azamat Murzakanov, I gotta believe that Azamat's gonna get the win here.
I think so too.
Do I think Costa could manage his power? Potentially.
Yeah, he has 12 wins. He has 12 wins by knockout, 10 in the first round. And as we just alluded to, Rakic, Ribeiro, and Menefield are some of his key wins from the Murzakanov side. I
mean, Paulo Costa definitely has faced a lot of tough competition that's on par with him, if not exceeding Azamat. but at the same time, now this fight's taking place at, is this 185 or 205?
This is a 205 fight.
Okay, so Costa is going up to light heavyweight. Because I
Correct.
know he's been dipping his toes, and he had one light heavyweight fight with Vettori, but I think that was just a weight thing that happened back in 2021, right?
Correct.
Okay, so technically this is not his light heavyweight debut, but it's a full-time jump to light heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? But that's going to be a concern as well, because I think he can handle Mirzakhanov's power, but at the same time, dealing with the power of a middleweight versus the power of a light heavyweight, that's two different forms of power. That's 20 pounds difference of power.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go with Mirzakhanov.
I'm going to take Mirzakhanov as well, and I think he does so in the first round.
I'm going to say second. I'm going to say early second.
Okay, any other fights in this card that jump out to you? Do we think that Josh Hokett is getting tested too early? What do we think?
Dana is so desperate for a new heavyweight. I'm going to be really honest with you. I can't stand Josh Hokett. Like, no matter what you want to think of, Americano or political view, he's a Colby. We just saw this with Colby freaking Covington. Get a new gimmick. Seriously, get a new gimmick. Honest, and the freaking Macho Man impersonation he tried on the debut Paramount card was pretty bad. I'm sorry. It was not a good performance from Hokett. And now you're going to, let's face it, the UFC is secretly hoping that Hokett beats Curtis Blades.
I would think so.
I'll be, if I have to return to fiery hot take Tom like I was years ago, here's my hot take for this. If Curtis Blades loses to Josh Hokett, he needs to retire.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. I have Blades winning. It's not going to be a good fight. It's not going to be a good fight because I think it's going to be the kind of wrestling where they just, sit on the ground for 15 minutes. But I think Curtis Blades he's faced tough competition, like you said. I think Hokett's getting tested too early. I'm going to go Blades by decision.
Okay. Yeah, I like Blades to win too. I don't know if it's by decision. I think he finishes him in the second, but it should be interesting though. Overall though, before this card, what would you give it? What would you give it as a grade overall? And do we think this is the best Miami card that they put together, or do we think that 314 or one of the other ones from the past takes the cake for this one?
Well, I want to see how this card plays out, but so far, we're counting the card as a whole, prelims and main card.
Yeah.
I'll give it a B. I think losing Van Tyra hurts. It definitely hurts the card. But you still got some decent names on here. You got Gastelum and Maluque in the early prelims, which is funny to think about. Tatiana Suarez is part of the prelims. Matus Gamrot. Pitbull versus Pico is your featured prelim. And I like the other two main card fights, Reyes Walker and Swanson Landwehr. Swanson Landwehr, why do I think that's going to be an absolute war?
Oh, because it will be. And it's Cub Swanson's last fight. So he's going to go out with a bang, and it should be fun.
Yeah, so you know what? I'm going to give it a B for pre-fight hype.
We shall see what happens. But yeah, that's UFC 327 in a nutshell. It's the second card of April, only on Paramount Plus. 5 Eastern prelims, and then followed by the main card on Paramount Plus. And before I let you go, because I haven't asked you this, how is your Paramount Plus experience so far? Do you like it?
Way better than ESPN.
When you say way better, can you be more specific?
There was only one card that I had streaming issues, and that was because Paramount Plus was updating. It wasn't because of them.
Okay. Very interesting. Yeah, yep. I think overall it's pretty good. It is missing the 1990s archive, though, which I simply do not understand why that is.
Well, right now we still have Fight Pass. Knock on wood. So
that's true.
I'm not going to hold them against them for that.
That's true. At least the streams do work. Some of the commercials are annoying, but yes, at least the streams do work.
It feels like that's going to be just the norm for streaming services. The repetitive commercials. You get it all the time with ESPN, Paramount, or Netflix.
That's very true. Very, very good. good point. I think that's a good place to end things, and this was definitely fun to do this. I didn't know how smoothly it would go, but I think it did pretty well. We almost did 100 people in here, so shout out to all of you guys, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was absolutely fun. Zain, I thank you so much for having me on. It was fun doing this with you. Again, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/ETV Network. Remember to ring the bell so you get notified of everything that takes place here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Obviously, we were live this week, so no audio, but listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcast if you need to take Empty the Bench or all of its shows on the road with you. And you can, of course, if you're watching on X, retweet the stream, give it a like, quote tweet it, please. And make sure to follow us on social media. I'm at Thomas J. Albano. That's at SamBando99. And Nick Morgasen is at Morgasen Radio. Nick will be back next week with Zain at its usual Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern start time. But again, Zain, I want to thank you so much for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure, buddy.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure as well. Thank you again for hosting. Look forward to doing this in the future, and we hope you all enjoyed the episode this week. It was a good one. So
yeah, absolutely. So until next time, that's Zain. I'm Tom. Thank you for tuning into another edition of Empty the Bench, and we'll see you. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Have a good one and take care. And that was episode 312 of ETB Sports. Have a good one, everyone.